So this is the Bafang M820, ladies and gentlemen.
So we're starting off in a tour mode.
Just needs to grab this quickly from my local tool station, but more on this later on the video. This is the battery.
Bloody hell. It's formidable. 75 Newton meters of torque. That is not bad. That is not bad, M820. What's crack-a-lacking, guys and girls? Hopefully everyone's doing alright. I know I am. It is a chilly one today, ladies and gentlemen, but for those of you who know my content, you'll know that this is usually the ideal season for anyone to test an e-bike, because let's face it, it is this type of season as to when you're going to be more using them, isn't it? Which brings me to this fantastic specimen, i.e. the CEF50, which is one of my newest creations, ladies and gentlemen, powered by the Bafang M820 and a 410 watt-hour battery. Now I'll go through the spec list as to how I've built this bike up. I'm so sorry, miss. So, I'll go through the spec list as to how this bike has been built up, as well as my experiences with it so far, which, spoiler alert, it's been interesting, but the end result, I would honestly say, has been worth it. But nevertheless, if you find this video useful, insightful, and interesting and enjoyable, entertaining, all that jizz, make sure you smash that like button and comment down below in case I miss anything. In addition, huge shout out to all the guys over on the CEF50/M820 lightweight thread on E-mtb forums. It was ultimately them who inspired me to build this bike because, fun fact, Deng Fu, to which my content is, well, for the last 2 years been largely based around, have been providing me with quite a few frames to build up, and they do have a frame which uses this exact same system, and I was just gonna wait for that and then obviously let that bike, the E69, be the acclamation EMTB to the M820, but opportunity came my way and I thought, screw it, let's see what this bike's all about. So yeah, stick around and I'll obviously tell you my experiences as to the CEF50 after 1 month's ownership.
So this is the Bafang M820, ladies and gentlemen. Gotta be honest, this thing is quite small. I mean, you know what? Just check out the screenshot as to what you're seeing actually. This is a screenshot of the M820 compared to the M600. Obviously I don't have an M5 or an M510 just knocking around, but again they're in bikes, but you can see the difference, ladies and gentlemen, in relation to the physical construction of this bike and of this motor, sorry, and just holding it, like it literally feels light. Like this is comparable to say like an EP801 in terms of weight. It's crazy. And this thing's kicking out 75 Newton meters of torque, and in its current configuration has a peak output of near 600 watts. It's pretty impressive.
Alright, so we're going to be using a combination of my phone, the app, the GoPro and the display. Speaking of the display, I want it to show, yep, the cadence, there we go. So the app should be recording, so in which case I should be able to know how much how much wattage is being generated in theory, in conjunction with the speed. Obviously the display will obviously show that as well. Put it in the highest level assist, so in boost, and just to be safe, you know what, let's just disable the ambient display thingamajig where it obviously adjusts because of sunlight, so hopefully you've got a good sight. Trajectory is up, ladies and gentlemen. You'll be seeing how much power the motor kicks out, my speed, the cadence I'm doing, the watt hours and the noise as well. test number 4. How good is the M820? Let's begin. Bloody hell. It's formidable. 75 newton meters of torque. That is not bad. That is not bad, M820. That is not bad. That was literally the same, I'd say, as my EP801. All right. And we did downshift a bit, but we didn't have to granny gear it. Hopefully you can see. So, not bad. Not bad.
This is the battery. This is a 410 watt-hour battery, or to be precise, a 43 volt 9 amp hour battery. Now, this is one of the first Bafang proprietary batteries I've ever used. And one of the nice things about this particular battery, ladies and gentlemen, is that this will have the feature for me to actually keep a running log as to the battery care in relation to this particular battery, courtesy of either the display or the Bafang Go or the Bafang Go Plus app. Essentially, one thing which has always plagued Bafang E-mtbs is keeping a running log as to how many charge cycles the battery has. This battery, along with all other Bafang dedicated batteries, promises to actually do that. So I'll be able to keep, again, a running log as the charge cycles in relation to this battery, the cell voltages per each cell and the row and the bank and so on and so forth. Keep a running log as to the average temperature in relation to this. Firmware updates, because obviously this is CAN-bus communication. You name it. This is stepping it up. This is pretty impressive. Now, this battery is obviously going to go into the down tube. But in fact, you know what, let me just show you quickly. So I've obviously had to just strip the CEF50 just for demonstration purposes, but essentially it will actually slide into the frame and connect into the frame that way. And obviously you can see the cables towards to the rear as to what would connect into the motor, as well as the battery. But this non-removable or non-trail side removable battery, being as I don't have the luxury of obviously removing it, one could argue that it's even more quintessentially important for me to keep a running log as to the health of the battery, because if there's any problems, rather than for you to remove a battery, say by either a key lock or a mechanism where it uses an Allen key, at least this way I'll be able to troubleshoot and understand if there is a problem with the battery, as opposed to me umming and ahhing and thinking, okay, so is it the battery, is it a connector, what's going on, and just again, troubleshooting quite easily. Pretty impressive. It is worth mentioning, if I haven't mentioned it already, that this frame can support either the 410 watt-hour battery, which is what I'm using, or a 720. The 720 watt-hour battery is a kilo heavier, so essentially with this bike, if I want to have more range, all I'm doing is adding a kilo of weight. In addition, the actual battery mounts into the frame courtesy of this mounting plate, ladies and gentlemen. So this mounting plate basically attaches onto the frame, and then you would screw the battery onto this. It doesn't obviously have like a rail system or anything along those lines there, which isn't too bad, to be fair, actually, because the mounting positions is how it secures onto the frame. You know, it's not just held in by, say, like 1 or 2 bolts, it's held in by 4, and then 2 more bolts obviously secure the battery, and obviously everything's Loctited and such. And obviously I've applied a little bit more Loctite just to be safe. But essentially, the process is how you slide the battery in and out once you remove the motor from the frame. It's pretty seamless. And one thing to also mention is that the battery, just in case, hopefully you can see it, does have a little draw carry lead here. So obviously, if it helps, you just turn the bike upside down, grab this, and just slide it out once you've obviously undone everything. But no, hopefully that's brought about awareness in relation to certain aspects of the system. There are a couple of things to also take into consideration as well. Obviously, this M820 system, it's using the disc rotor magnet sensor as opposed to the spoke magnet sensor. So of course the cable as to how it attaches is different. It is retrofittable to say like the M510 and the M600 and such. It just depends upon the frame as to what implements it. I just want to interrupt the video quickly because I realised that the original reason why I took the bike apart was because of one little issue I was originally having when I first built up the bike. And that was a little bit of a battery rattle in relation to how the battery is mounted and a little bit of cable rattle within the down tube. In fact, you know what? Roll the clip.
Oh yes, we did it.
Now this is where the insulation foam comes into play, ladies and gentlemen. Essentially, I just went to my local hardware store and bought some. But essentially, where the battery slides into the frame, there's a bit of void of space because the battery, in terms of its physical width, is a bit smaller than the actual down tube itself. So I actually measured it, and roughly it's about 20 mil per each side of the battery as to where it mounts in. So I managed to obviously get some, again, insulation foam, put 2 strips around each side of the battery, slide it in, and obviously as I slid it in, I could feel a bit of resistance with enough in order to not only keep the battery at bay so it didn't rattle, but also quell the cable rattling sound within the down tube as well. It's not added any weight, so that's a good thing, but essentially, yeah, just wanted to make sure that that is apparent, that if you're going to build one of these bikes up, you do need a bit of insulation foam. But anyway, back to the video. Alright guys, so it's been a good month since I've built up the CEF50. Now, I won't lie to you, the original reason why I built up the CEF50 was primarily to acclimate me to the Bafang M820 system. And don't get me wrong, this isn't going to be the only E-mtb which will have that system which I'll be building up. There'll be 2 others which I'll be building up transitioning into 2024. But I gotta be honest with you, even though that this is the first frame which has built up the M820 and has acclimated me to it, one could argue that I have seriously underestimated the platform in its entirety. This is, I dare say, one of the best E-mtbs which I've built up so far, and that is saying something, ladies and gentlemen. Like, I have literally enjoyed this E-mtb so much that I've literally put quite a few of my E-mtbs away. And again, I've underestimated this frame. This bike is a lot more capable than what you may think, and it's a trail E-mtb at the end of the day. I'm not going to generalize it and say that it's anything other than, but I would go as far as to say that this bike, literally, it's one-upping quite a few E-mtbs which I've seen which are even mainstream. Now, speaking of mainstream, because I know a lot of people have asked me how does it compare to other mainstream E-mtbs, I am slowly comparing them to others. I won't lie to you, I've not confined my efforts just to simply comparing it to the super light and mid-assist category of electric mountain bikes, because it didn't take myself and a select few friends to realise that the performance of the M820 far exceeds anything associated with super light or E-mtbs or mid-assist E-mtbs. It's way more powerful. I mean, just for reference, I snapped the chain on a climb, which, to be fair, that's usually associated with full fat E-mtbs.
Whoa! What happened? Please don't tell me we snapped the chain. We snapped the friggin' chain! No! Oh! Oh no! Oh! Why? Why? Oh well. Oh well. Oh well. Oh well. Oh well. Okay. Okay. All right. And that's the end of that chapter.
But having said that though, the lightweight approach of the CEF50 in terms of handling and its performance definitely makes it a contender, especially if you want to put it more in association with the full fat category of electric mountain bikes, which between me and you, ladies and gentlemen, that's how I look at the CEF50. I don't look at it as a super light or a mid assist. I look at it more as full fat. Might as well go over some things to which I haven't highlighted so far. So the weight of the CEF50, my CEF50, which is an XL, which is using a Fox 36 up front, 44mm offset 29er with the Fox Float X 210 by 55, giving 150mm of rear wheel travel, full 29er wheel sets, WTB SDI 30s with the EXO DHR 2 at back in a 2.3 and an EXO DHF in a 2.5 up front, a combination of Shimano SLX and Dior for the group set, and a 200mm dropper. The weight of the bike is 22.18 kilos, and that's with the 410 watt-hour battery. Now, for those of you who are familiar with electric mountain bikes, especially the super light and mid assist category, I have no doubt you're probably looking at me thinking, dude, that's not light. And being honest, I don't have a leg to stand on in order to disagree, because you're right, it's not light, especially if you were to compare it to the competition. But now, talking about the M820 just for a second, some things to which some people may not realise, the M820 system does have an overrun feature. That overrun feature does come in handy, ladies and gentlemen, especially when you are riding with full fat E-mtbs. Technical climbing is brilliant regarding this motor, ladies and gentlemen. In fact, one could argue that how you'd use the system is very reminiscent to how you would run a full fat E-mtb. You would use the higher levels of assist more for the technical climbing, and then you would use the mid to low levels of assist in order to either be a bit conservative in terms of battery range, or just enough for you to obviously get the inertia going so that you can get the bike moving and keep a decent speed. Obviously, the bike is rolling on 29-inch wheels, so it's got the mechanical advantage in that aspect. And of course, for any of you mullet fans out there, yes, even though that the chainstay length is 450, there have been quite a few people who have ended up mulleting them, some of which have even gone as far as to use 27.5 front and rear in an effort in order to try and bring down the standover height a little bit lower. But I'll leave a link in the description to the M820/CEF50 lightweight thread to E-mtb forums down below, so you can check them out, as well as see all the other examples as to what others have built up. In addition, some of you may have also noticed that this frame uses headset cable routing. Now, you are in luck, because I do get it, there are some people who just don't like it. Me, on the other hand, I'm slowly becoming acclimated to it, put it that way. I mean, there's going to be frames in 2024 which will be using that standard, so I've got no choice but to become acclimated to it. But you are in luck, as I've said, because there will be head tube cable routings. In fact, there are head tube cable routings for the CEF50, which I have seen others building up. And to be fair, when I actually got mine, I was given the opportunity to have the head tube cable routing, but I opted for the headset because I thought, well, that's how it's usually shown on the images, so let's just stick with how it usually is depicted. The bike isn't technically running the SRAM Universal derailleur hanger, but I have spoken with the factory. The next run of the CEF50 will use the SRAM Universal derailleur hanger, and the good news is that rather than you obviously buying a complete frame which uses the SRAM Universal derailleur hanger, essentially it's just going to be a case in which you'll either need to swap out the rear end, or from what one source has told me, it would be a simple case in which you just need to swap out the seat stay on the drive side, because that's what the derailleur hanger is equipped onto. So not too problematic in that aspect, because at least you're not having to reroute and route cables through the rear chainstays of the bike. In addition, there's no chain guide provisions on the bike. But again, spoken with the factory, they have said that that's something in which they will be implementing again for the next run. I mean, fun fact, unlike a lot of the M820 e-bikes which I've done my research on, this frame actually uses a dedicated mounting position regarding the M820 in terms of the bolts. And so how it's been described to me is that the middle bolts, they'll use a thread insert in order to attach a chain guide. But obviously, like, I'll keep you guys in the loop in relation to that. So as always, keep a watchful eye on upcoming content. Of course, being as I've opted for the 410 watt-hour battery, the range, that becomes a bit of an issue. Now, as I said previously, there is a 720 watt-hour battery which you can use, which will add a little bit of weight to the bike. In addition, also worth mentioning, I do understand that there are some people out there who don't like the idea of not being able to remove the battery. That is something to take into consideration as well, ladies and gentlemen. Like, I have provisions in which I'm able to charge the bikes inside and out. And I would strongly recommend anyone who's thinking about building one of these bikes to take that into consideration, because at the end of the day, if you're like me, before you even wheel the bike inside, if you've been out in a muddy, wet day, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to have to clean the bike. And instead of usually removing the battery, then putting the battery on charge, then going back to the bike and then cleaning it, you don't have that provision. Everything needs to go inside, and if you're going to bring that dirt with you, then that's even more mess you're going to have to clean up. So again, just bear that in mind. That is something which I would strongly recommend people take on board if you're thinking about building this bike up. And then lastly, of course, the only other thing in which is worth mentioning is the noises to the M820 motor. There have been a couple of people who have pointed out that the motor is a bit noisy for what it is. Audibly, it can be heard, especially in peak output. But, you know, by the time I've cracked open the motor and found out what grease is in there, I'm pretty sure I'll probably silence the hell out of it. So, as always, keep a watchful eye. If I find any hacks in order to silence the motor, if it is a prolific thing, then of course I'll share my experiences so that any of you who are interested could obviously give it a bash as well. But again, we'll be coming back to the CEF50. Huge shout out to everyone who made this build possible. Merlin Cycles for the majority of the build kit, GT Store, which provided me with the frame, Chili and Anna, who provided me with the M820 system. Ladies and gentlemen, like, you know, huge shout out to them. And of course, please hit that subscribe button if you found this video interesting. And of course, until the next time, take it easy, stay safe, peace for the journey, #FABT, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace out.